Well, welcome to No Shave November. So this is going to get worse throughout the month. We're working on head gaskets on this Toyota Sienna, and the cylinder heads came back warped, so Toyota recommends that you just replace them. So now I got to wait for that again, and now we're checking the block. Straight edge, make sure that nothing's too fucked up. So basically, this engine is completely shot. I measured it with a straight edge, and what you do is they're going to have you measure in a couple different directions. I'll get you a better picture of this in just a second here, but the block is warped. So I'm going to flip this over and kind of show you what we're talking about. So if you look right here, you can see my feeler gauge still out. So the spec on this was it could only be 0.07 millimeters off, or about 2 thousandths was the tolerance that Toyota gives you. And they're going to have you measure the bottom of the cylinders, the top, and then you go sideways and sideways. And right along here on cylinder number 4, because it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This cylinder had a really low spot right here, which kind of makes sense because we did have a history misfire on this vehicle. And because of that, we don't want to put everything back together and have the same issue again. So yeah, this stuff is pretty interesting. Unfortunately, none of the options that this customer has are going to be cheap at all. So customer basically has 3 options. We can throw a used motor in it, which is going to be the most cost effective. Of course, you don't know how well it was maintained. You really just go off of miles, and well, that can help some. I really truly think it has a lot more to do with how the previous owner maintained said vehicle, not necessarily the miles. So it's taking a risk, but that's going to be the most cost-effective option. Their other option is risky. We take this block, we put brand new Toyota cylinder heads on it. I'll swap over the valves and everything, and you just hope that it gets snugged down good and that isn't an issue. Because like I said, this is like right on that edge, but it's pretty black and white. I mean, either it's good or it's not. So that's another option that this customer is going to have. The third option that we have is a brand new short block, which is going to be just like this, minus the accessories, cooler lines and stuff, of course, and then we'd put brand new cylinder heads on it that way. Toyota doesn't recommend that you machine down their cylinder heads, so unfortunately that's nothing you can really fix. And like I said, this thing is warped, so this thing had to have gotten hot. I mean, it had to have gotten really hot, and it's an unfortunate situation. I wish I would have seen some failure in the head gaskets, but when I took the head gaskets out, they looked pretty good. There was no like visible sign of obvious failure on that cylinder where we saw the coolant leaking, so we know that the problem came from warpage on the cylinder head and the block itself, which we don't see these blocks get hot like this very often. In fact, most of the time we have head gasket issues, the heads get checked, we send them out to check them, and they end up being just fine as well. So we know that this thing got hot, and I mean, it's an unfortunate situation, but this stuff is really interesting. I'm going to show you one more thing here. I'm going to flip this over. You can see that if we're looking at the cylinders here, I'll get my light, maybe that'll help. It's probably not going to show up super well on the camera, but you can see that there's a pretty obvious difference between cylinder number 2, 4, and 6. So the difference being that this one kind of has more of a white hue to it. Those two are more carboned up and a little bit oily. This to me is indicative of coolant being burned, unfortunately, which was what was happening, which makes sense noting that we have our lowest spot on this block right about here. So like I said, unfortunately, this is going to be an expensive repair. There, if I pull it back, you can kind of see the difference in the coloration just a little bit on those pistons there. Alright guys, so yeah, I just thought that I would show you this. That's something kind of interesting, and this is probably my favorite stuff to do, minus the flat rate system, which unfortunately makes this kind of stressful. But if I had all the time in the world, this would be my favorite stuff to do. This tearing down engines, diagnosing them, looking at what exactly went wrong. And this thing stumped me for a long time, and one of my coworkers ended up helping me out, so it ended up working out pretty well. So I thank him for that. I mean, I was just brain dead, you guys. I got to a point where I couldn't think about this thing anymore. I'm gonna put a couple clips in right here just so you can see how involved this process is, show you some of the parts that are sitting around. Yeah, so we'll do that right now. Alright guys, so yeah, thanks for tuning into this short little video. Coming up next, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. We get to 500 subscribers, we're giving away another tool, and I got something fun planned. We got Diet Coke and Mentos and an Avalon. So we're going to see just how tough a Toyota engine is with Diet Coke and Mentos for the oil change. Shift, wrench, repeat, you guys. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.